Mafia boss's one-night stand humiliates black maid. What happened next left everyone terrified. Check her pockets, Antonio Valenti commanded, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. These types always steal something. Olivia stood frozen as rough hands patted her down, the humiliation burning through her body like acid. Just hours ago, those same hands had traced her skin with reverence, his whispers warm against her neck. Now his eyes were cold, dismissive. "Nothing, boss," the man reported. "Then escort her to security. Make sure she's fired immediately." Olivia lifted her chin, refusing to let tears fall as three men in expensive suits watched her degradation. She wouldn't give Antonio the satisfaction of seeing her break. "I can see myself out," she said, voice steady despite the earthquake in her chest. Antonio's uncle smirked. "Really, Antonio? The help? Your father would be disappointed." As the door closed behind her, Olivia heard no defense, no explanation. Just silence. The kind that confirmed everything she already knew about men with power and women without it. What she didn't know was how that moment of humiliation would set off a chain of events that would leave bodies in its wake and change both their lives forever. If you want to discover how this hotel maid brought a powerful mafia family to its knees, keep watching until the end. This story will show you how the most underestimated person in the room can become the most dangerous. Like this video if you've ever been underestimated, and subscribe to Serafina's stories for more tales that will leave you breathless. Now let's go back to where it all began. The luxury Grand Hotel gleamed like a diamond against the Manhattan skyline, its marble floors and crystal chandeliers a world away from Olivia Reynolds' one-bedroom apartment in Queens. For 3 years she'd moved through these hallways like a ghost, invisible to the wealthy guests who dropped $1,000 tips without a second thought. Tonight was different. The Valenti family had rented the entire top floor for what the staff whispered was a business gathering. Everyone knew what that meant. The Valentis controlled half the city's underground economy, though nothing had ever been proven in court. "Reynolds, you're on cleanup duty for the penthouse suite," Mrs. Harrington, the head of housekeeping, informed her. "Wait until the event is over." Mr. Valenti specifically requested minimal staff presence. Olivia nodded, keeping her face neutral despite the dread pooling in her stomach. Late-night cleanup meant a 2 a.m. finish, which meant catching the night bus home. But she needed this job desperately. Her mother's medication wasn't covered by insurance, and the eviction notice had appeared 3 days ago. "Yes, ma'am," she replied, tucking an escaped curl back under her uniform cap. The night progressed slowly. From service corridors and back elevators, Olivia caught glimpses of the gathering, men in tailored suits, women dripping in jewels, champagne flowing like water. Security guards with telltale bulges under their jackets stood at every entrance. It was nearly midnight when she was collecting empty glasses from a service station that she first saw him up close. Antonio Valenti, 34 years old, heir to the Valenti empire after his father's mysterious death 3 years ago. He was leaning against the wall, loosened tie hanging around his neck, a half-empty tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. He looked up as she approached, his dark eyes focusing on her with unexpected intensity. "You," he said, straightening. "What's your name?" Olivia froze. "Olivia Reynolds, sir. I'm with housekeeping." Something flickered across his face. Amusement, perhaps. "Olivia." He said her name slowly as if tasting it. "You're different from the others." She wasn't sure if he meant the other staff or the glamorous women at his party. Either way, being noticed by Antonio Valenti wasn't a good thing. "I should continue my duties, Mr. Valenti," she said carefully. "Stay." Not a request. He moved closer and she caught the scent of expensive cologne mingled with whiskey. "Everyone in there is either afraid of me or wants something from me. Which are you?" "Neither, sir. I just work here." He laughed, the sound surprisingly genuine. "Honest. I like that." He swirled his drink, studying her. "When does your shift end?" Warning bells rang in Olivia's mind. "I'm on cleanup duty tonight. After the event." "Perfect." He drained his glass. "Come to the penthouse when you're done. I'll make it worth your time." Before she could respond, he was gone, disappearing back into the party. Olivia stood frozen, heart hammering against her ribs. Had Antonio Valenti just propositioned her? The thought was both terrifying and absurd. She wouldn't go. Couldn't go. Men like him didn't see women like her. They consumed them and moved on. But as the party wound down and guests departed, leaving destruction in their wake, Olivia found herself standing outside the penthouse door at 1:30 a.m., cleaning cart beside her. The eviction notice flashed in her mind. Her mother's medication. The worth your time promise that likely meant a tip that could solve both problems. She knocked. Enter, came the response. The penthouse was a disaster. Empty bottles, discarded glasses, ashtrays overflowing. Antonio sat alone on the couch, jacket gone, shirt partially unbuttoned. He looked up as she entered, a slow smile spreading across his face. You came to clean, Mr. Valenti, she clarified, gesturing to her cart. He waved dismissively. Later. Have a drink with me first. I don't drink on duty. One exception. He was already pouring a second glass. Consider it a direct order from the hotel's most valuable client. Olivia hesitated. Refusing could cost her job. Accepting could cost her something worse. But there was something in his eyes, not predatory but almost lonely. She accepted the glass but didn't drink. Tell me something, Olivia Reynolds, he said, settling back on the couch. What do you want from life? The question caught her off guard. Sir. Everyone wants something. Money, power, revenge, love. He studied her. What's your something? Perhaps it was the lateness of the hour or the surreal nature of the situation, but Olivia found herself answering honestly. Security. For my mother to be healthy. To finish my nursing degree someday. He shrugged. Nothing exciting. On the contrary. His eyes seemed clearer suddenly, more focused. Those are the only things worth wanting. The rest is smoke. For the next hour they talked. Really talked. Antonio asked about her mother's illness, her abandoned studies, her childhood in Queens. He listened with genuine interest, refilling his own glass several times but never commenting when hers remained untouched. In turn, he spoke of expectations of a father whose shadow still darkened his life, of trying to transform a criminal empire into something legitimate while keeping his family's respect. They don't understand, he said, voice slightly slurred now. The old ways are dying. We adapt or we fall. But tradition. He made a frustrated gesture. It's a chain. Olivia found herself nodding. Sometimes the hardest part of change is disappointing the people who raised you. He looked at her with surprise. Exactly. Exactly that. When he moved closer, she should have pulled away. When his hand touched her face, she should have stood up. When he leaned in, whiskey on his breath, she should have remembered who they were, a maid and a mafia boss worlds apart. Instead, she closed her eyes. His kiss was gentle, questioning. His hands even more so. Each touch came with an unspoken request for permission that she granted again and again, until they moved from the couch to the bedroom, the city lights painting patterns across their skin. In the darkness, power and status fell away. They were just a man and a woman finding connection in an unexpected place. His whispers were tender, almost reverent. For one foolish night, Olivia forgot who they both were. Morning brought reality crashing back. Olivia woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. For a moment, disorientation clouded her mind. The silk sheets, the expansive room, the warm body beside her. Then memory returned and with it panic. She slipped from the bed carefully, gathering her discarded uniform. Antonio still slept, his face younger, more vulnerable in repose. Last night had been a mistake. A beautiful one, but a mistake nonetheless. She would leave quietly, return to her position, pretend it never happened. She was halfway dressed when the door burst open. Antonio jerked awake, confusion crossing his face as he registered both her partially clothed form and the three men entering the suite. The oldest, gray-haired with cold eyes, assessed the scene with calculated disgust. Antonio, we have the meeting in 20 minutes. What's this? Shame and anger flashed across Antonio's face. In that moment, Olivia saw his choice being made, preserve his reputation or defend her dignity. Nothing important, uncle. Antonio's voice hardened as he turned back to her. Just the help forgetting her place. The words sliced through her. Not because they were unexpected, but because for a few hours last night she'd believed he might be different. Get her out, the uncle ordered, and one of the younger men moved toward Olivia. She stepped back. I can see myself out. Check her pockets first, Antonio said coldly. These types always steal something. The humiliation burned hotter than any physical pain. As rough hands patted her down in front of these powerful men, Olivia locked eyes with Antonio. She wouldn't cry, wouldn't beg, wouldn't give him the satisfaction of breaking her. Nothing, boss, the man reported. Then escort her to security. Make sure she's fired immediately. Olivia allowed herself to be let out, spine straight despite the weight crushing her chest. In the hallway she heard Antonio's uncle. Really, Antonio? The help? Your father would be disappointed. The door closed, cutting off Antonio's response. But Olivia didn't need to hear it. She already understood perfectly. What she didn't understand was how drastically both their lives were about to change. 3 weeks passed like a slow-motion nightmare. Olivia's termination from the luxury grand wasn't just a job loss. It was a blacklisting that spread through Manhattan's hospitality industry like wildfire. Every application met with the same apologetic rejection. We'd love to hire you, but the Valentis have influence everywhere. But we can't afford to cross certain people. But your references from your last position are concerning. The eviction notice on her apartment door now had a final date. Her mother's medication was running dangerously low. Desperation had driven her to a small laundromat in a forgotten corner of Queens, owned by an elderly Korean couple who didn't care about hotel politics or mafia connections. You fold very precisely, Mrs. Kim had commented during her interview. Good hands. You start tomorrow. The pay was barely enough to cover rent, let alone her mother's needs. But it was something. A foothold to keep from sliding completely into the abyss. Rain pounded against the windows of the coffee shop where Olivia now sat, nursing a lukewarm Americano she'd stretched for over an hour. The newspaper on the table carried a small headline on page 3. Valenti Holdings acquires riverfront property amid controversy. She traced Antonio's name with her fingertip, then quickly pulled her hand away. Foolish to still think about him. Foolish to remember how his voice had softened when he'd asked about her dreams, or how his fingers had traced her cheekbone like she was something precious. Foolish to wonder if, in another life, things might have been different. The bell above the door chimed and she glanced up reflexively. Her heart stopped. Antonio Valenti stood in the doorway, water dripping from his expensive overcoat. Their eyes met across the small space and for a moment neither moved. Then he walked directly to her table. May I sit? He asked as if they were acquaintances meeting by chance. Olivia should have said no. Should have thrown her coffee in his face and walked out. Instead, she gestured to the empty chair across from her. He sat, removing his coat to reveal a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her rent. Up close, she noticed the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw. How did you find me? She asked. I have resources. He paused. That sounds threatening. I apologize. What do you want, Mr. Valenti? He flinched at the formality. I need to speak with you about what happened. You mean when you had me publicly humiliated and fired? Or the night before when you treated me like a human being? Antonio glanced around, then leaned forward. I handled that morning badly. Inexcusably. But there are things you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Men like you use people like me, then discard us when we become inconvenient. That's not... He stopped, reconsidering. Yes, that's exactly what I did. And I've come to apologize. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. An apology won't get me job back. No. But this might help. He slid an envelope across the table. It's not a bribe. It's compensation for wrongful termination. And a letter of recommendation for any position you might want. Olivia didn't touch it. Why now? It's been 3 weeks. Antonio's expression darkened. Because I discovered why you were assigned to the penthouse that night. Who arranged it. And what they hoped would happen. A chill ran through her. What are you talking about? You were set up, Olivia. We both were. He ran a hand through his damp hair. My uncle has been moving against me for months. He wanted compromising material. Something to use against me with the family council. When he saw us together, he thought he'd found it. So you threw me to the wolves to protect yourself. Yes. No excuses, no justification. Just raw honesty. And I've regretted it every day since. Olivia studied him, searching for deception. Why tell me this? Because you deserve to know. And because, he hesitated. Because I haven't been able to forget you. The confession hung between them, dangerous and electric. Olivia had spent 3 weeks trying to hate this man, but now, facing his vulnerability, she felt her resolve weakening. What happens now? She asked. That depends on you. Antonio reached across the table, his fingers stopping just short of hers. I'd like to start over. Properly this time. As what? Your mistress? Your charity case. As someone I'd like to know better. His eyes held hers. Someone who saw me as a man, not just a name. Someone who wasn't afraid to stand up to me, even when I deserved your fear. Olivia should have walked away. Everything about this screamed danger. But something in his expression, a loneliness that mirrored her own, made her hesitate. One coffee, she said finally. That's all I'm agreeing to. The smile that transformed his face was nothing like the cold mask he'd worn in the hotel suite. This was real, warm, almost boyish. One coffee, he agreed. For now. Neither of them noticed the man watching from across the street, phone already pressed to his ear. The coffee became dinner at a small Ethiopian restaurant where no one recognized Antonio without his usual entourage. Dinner became a walk through a rain-washed park, his security team following at a discreet distance. The walk became a conversation on her building's stoop that lasted until dawn. I should go, Antonio said as the sky lightened, though he made no move to leave. You should, Olivia agreed, equally motionless. Their second kiss was nothing like their first. No alcohol, no power imbalance, no pretense. Just two people choosing each other despite every reason not to. When he finally left, Olivia found the envelope he'd given her still unopened in her purse. Inside was not only the promised letter and compensation but also a phone. Sleek, expensive, with only one number programmed into it. A note was attached. For when you want to talk. Or when you don't. Your choice always. She should have thrown it away. Instead she charged it. That night she texted him, my mother needs to see a specialist. The waiting list is 8 months. His response came immediately, give me her information. It will be 8 days. Olivia stared at the screen, moral dilemmas warring within her. Was she selling something of herself by accepting his help? Or was she foolish to reject it out of pride when her mother's health hung in the balance? No strings, came a second text. This isn't a transaction, Olivia. He sent the information. 7 days later her mother called, voice bright with hope for the first time in months. The hospital called. There was a cancellation. I'm seeing Dr. Brenner tomorrow. Can you believe our luck? What? Olivia closed her eyes. That's wonderful, Mom. That evening she texted Antonio again. Thank you. Have dinner with me tomorrow, he replied. And so it began. This strange, secret relationship that existed in the spaces between their worlds. Antonio never came to her apartment with his security team, never flaunted his wealth or position. Instead, he would arrive alone, sometimes bringing takeout from hole-in-the-wall restaurants he'd discovered, other times ingredients to cook together in her tiny kitchen. In those moments he wasn't Antonio Valenti, heir to a criminal empire. He was just Antonio. A man who burned garlic bread, who laughed at bad reality TV, who listened to her stories about growing up in Queens with genuine interest. My father would have a stroke if he could see me now, he said one night, washing dishes while Olivia dried. The great Salvatore Valenti's son, playing house in a walk-up apartment. Is that what we're doing? Playing house? Olivia asked, the question lighter than the weight behind it. Antonio set down the plate he was washing, turning to face her. Water dripped from his hands onto the linoleum floor. No, he said quietly. This is the only place I'm not playing a role. He kissed her then, hands still wet, cradling her face like she was something infinitely precious. They made it to the bedroom this time, leaving a trail of clothes behind them. In the darkness of her small room, with city lights filtering through thin curtains, Antonio worshipped her body with a reverence that brought tears to her eyes. Afterward, lying in her narrow bed, he traced patterns on her skin and spoke of things he'd never told anyone. His fear of becoming his father, his dreams of legitimizing the family business, his loneliness even when surrounded by people. I've been groomed since birth to take over, he explained, voice low in the darkness. The Valenti empire spans generations. But the world is changing. The old ways, The violence, the extortion, they're not sustainable. What are you trying to build instead? Olivia asked, head resting on his chest. Something clean. Real estate, import-export, financial services. Businesses that can stand scrutiny. His arm tightened around her. My uncle thinks I'm weak. That I'm dismantling everything my father built. He doesn't understand I'm trying to save it, just in a different form. And the council? Will they support you? Antonio was silent for a long moment. Some will. Others are like my uncle, set in the old ways. The vote next month will determine the family's direction for years to come. Olivia propped herself up on one elbow, studying his face in the half-light. Is that why you can't be seen with me publicly? Because it would undermine your position? No. His answer was immediate, firm. I keep you private because my world is dangerous, Olivia. People I care about become targets. Leverage. His fingers brushed her cheek. I couldn't bear it if something happened to you because of me. She wanted to believe him. And for 2 months, in the sanctuary of her apartment, she did. Their relationship existed in stolen moments. Dinners at obscure restaurants where no one would recognize him, walks in deserted parks after midnight, weekends at a cabin upstate where they could pretend the outside world didn't exist. Antonio arranged for her mother to receive treatment at a private clinic, though Olivia insisted on paying what she could from her laundromat wages. Your pride will be the death of me, Antonio complained, but his eyes were warm with admiration. My pride is why you're here, she reminded him. If I'd broken that morning in your hotel room, you'd have forgotten me by lunch. He couldn't argue with that. As weeks passed, Olivia began to see the toll Antonio's double life was taking. He would arrive at her apartment with tension radiating from his shoulders, dark circles under his eyes. Sometimes his phone would ring in the middle of the night, and he would step into the bathroom to take the call, returning with a carefully blank expression. Once he arrived with bruised knuckles that he refused to explain. Business disagreement, was all he would say. Olivia cleaned the cuts silently, wondering how long they could balance on this knife's edge between his world and hers. How long before something, or someone, forced them to choose. The answer came sooner than she expected. It was a Tuesday morning, unseasonably cold for September. Olivia was opening the laundromat, flipping the sign from closed to open, when a black sedan pulled to the curb. The window lowered, revealing a face she recognized immediately, Antonio's uncle, Salvatore Valenti Jr. Miss Reynolds, he said pleasantly. A moment of your time? Fear prickled along her spine. I'm working. This won't take long. He gestured to the empty seat beside him. Please. Olivia glanced around the empty street, then reluctantly approached the car. She didn't enter, instead leaning down to the window. What do you want? To offer some friendly advice. His smile never reached his eyes. My nephew is playing a dangerous game. One that will get him killed if he continues. And anyone close to him will suffer the same fate. Is that a threat? A reality check. He studied her. Antonio was raised for a specific purpose. The family has expectations. Traditions. You're a distraction he can't afford right now. Olivia straightened. If Antonio wanted to end things, he'd tell me himself. Would he? Men like us are taught to take what we want. He wants you, so he takes you. The uncle sighed. He's fond of you, I'll grant that. Which is why I'm giving you this opportunity to walk away unharmed. And if I don't? His expression hardened. Then I can't guarantee your safety. Or your mother's. Ice flooded Olivia's veins. Leave my mother out of this. Philadelphia is lovely this time of year, I hear. Especially the assisted living facility on Maple Street. The casual mention of her mother's exact location made Olivia's knees weak. They'd been watching her all along. What do you want from me? She whispered. End it. Today. Make him believe you never cared. The uncle reached into his jacket, producing an envelope. This should ease the transition. Enough to finish your nursing degree and relocate your mother somewhere more secure. Olivia didn't take it. You don't know Antonio if you think money would make me hurt him. Something like respect flickered in the older man's eyes. Then do it because you care for him. His position is precarious. The family council meets next week to determine leadership for the next 5 years. If he appears weak or distracted. He didn't need to finish the thought. Olivia had heard enough from Antonio to understand the stakes. The Valenti family wasn't known for peaceful transitions of power. "He's trying to change things," she said. "Make the business legitimate. Change comes slowly in our world. Too much, too fast gets people killed." The uncle placed the envelope on the seat. "Think about it. For both your sakes." The window rolled up and the sedan pulled away, leaving Olivia trembling on the sidewalk. She spent the day in a fog, mechanically sorting laundry, making change, smiling at customers while her mind raced through impossible scenarios. By closing time, she'd made her decision. That night, when Antonio arrived at her apartment, she was waiting with packed bags and a rehearsed speech. But one look at his face, open, trusting, so different from the man who'd dismissed her months ago, and the words died in her throat. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately, crossing to take her hands. Olivia pulled away. "Your uncle visited me today." Antonio went still. "What did he say?" "Enough." She met his eyes. "He threatened my mother, Antonio." Rage transformed his features. "I'll handle this. No one threatens you or your family." "How?" "By having him killed." The words came out harsher than intended. "That's not the solution." "Then what is?" "I can't let this stand." Olivia took a deep breath. "I need to leave the city. Tonight." "I'll come with you." The simple declaration stunned her. "What?" "I'll come with you," he repeated. "I have properties outside the city. We can go tonight, set up security for your mother, figure this out together." "What about the council meeting? Your businesses?" Antonio shook his head. "None of that matters if you're not safe." "It matters to me." Olivia touched his face gently. "Everything you've built, everything you're trying to change, I won't be the reason it falls apart. And I won't be the reason you live in fear." He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I love you, Olivia. I think I have since that morning in the hotel, when you stood before me with more dignity than anyone I've ever known." The words broke something inside her. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she pulled him close, breathing in the scent of him, expensive cologne and something uniquely Antonio. "I love you too," she whispered against his chest. "That's why we need a better plan than running." Antonio held her tighter. "I might have one. But it's risky. Tell me." He led her to the couch, keeping her hands in his as they sat. "My uncle isn't acting alone. There's a faction within the family that wants to maintain the old ways. The violence, the territory wars. They see my push for legitimacy as weakness. And the council meeting? A vote on the family's direction. If I win, I can accelerate our move into legitimate businesses. If my uncle wins." Antonio's expression darkened. "Let's just say the body count would rise significantly. So what's your plan?" "I've been gathering evidence. Financial records, recordings, witness statements. Proof that my uncle has been skimming from family businesses, making deals with rivals, even ordering hits without council approval." Olivia's eyes widened. "You're going to expose him?" "At the council meeting. It's our tradition. Grievances aired openly, judgment rendered immediately." Antonio's thumb traced circles on her palm. "But I need to keep you safe until then. My uncle clearly sees you as my weakness." "Or your strength," Olivia countered. "He wouldn't bother threatening me if he didn't think I mattered." A smile touched Antonio's lips. "Always seeing the angle I miss." He sobered quickly. "Still, I want you somewhere secure until after the meeting. I'm not hiding while you face this alone." "Olivia." "No." She pulled her hands free, standing to pace the small living room. "I've spent my life being invisible, Antonio. A ghost in hotel hallways, cleaning up after people who never see me. I won't be hidden away now, not when it matters most." Antonio watched her, conflict evident in his expression. "What are you suggesting?" "Take me to the council meeting." He stared at her like she'd suggested jumping off the Brooklyn Bridge. "Absolutely not. That room will be filled with the most dangerous people in New York." "Exactly. And they should see exactly who they're threatening." Olivia knelt before him, taking his hands again. "Your uncle thinks I'm your weakness. Show them I'm your partner. It would put a target on your back permanently." "I already have one." She squeezed his hands. "At least this way I'm facing it, standing beside you, not hiding in some safe house wondering if you're alive or dead." Antonio was silent for a long moment, studying her face. Finally he nodded slowly. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most foolish. Probably both. She smiled faintly. So what's the plan? For the next 3 days they prepared. Antonio moved Olivia's mother to a private medical facility in Boston, with security that reported directly to him. He arranged for Mrs. Kim to take an unexpected vacation to visit her sister in California, all expenses paid. And he brought Olivia to one of his properties, a penthouse in a building he owned, where his most trusted security team could protect her. The council meets in 4 days, he explained, showing her the evidence he'd compiled against his uncle. Until then you stay here. My men will guard you 24/7. And you? Olivia asked, noting the strain around his eyes. I have arrangements to make. People to speak with before the meeting. He kissed her forehead. I'll be back tonight. But that night Antonio didn't return. Nor the next morning. By afternoon Olivia was pacing the penthouse, fear gnawing at her insides. Has there been any word? She asked Marco, the head of security, for the dozenth time. The man's stoic expression never changed. Mr. Valenti is handling business matters, Miss Reynolds. He'll return when he can. Something in his tone raised her suspicions. You know something you're not telling me. Marco hesitated, then sighed. There was an incident last night. One of our warehouses was hit. Mr. Valenti is dealing with the fallout. Was he hurt? No, ma'am. But 3 of our men were. Olivia sank onto the couch, the implications clear. Antonio's uncle was making his move before the council meeting, trying to weaken Antonio's position, or eliminate him entirely. When Antonio finally returned that evening, the evidence was written on his body. A cut above his eyebrow. Bruised knuckles. The careful way he held himself, suggesting hidden injuries beneath his suit. Don't ask, he said when Olivia rushed to him. Please. She helped him to the bedroom, gently removing his jacket and shirt to reveal bruises blooming across his ribs. Without a word, she went to the bathroom, returning with a first aid kit. Your uncle? She asked, cleaning the cut on his face. Antonio nodded grimly. A message. He's letting me know he can reach me anywhere. The council meeting has been moved up. Tomorrow night. He caught her hand as she applied antiseptic to his knuckles. Olivia, I need you to reconsider. Stay here where it's safe. Not a chance. She met his gaze steadily. We face this together. He studied her face, then nodded once. Together. That night as they lay in bed, Antonio held her like she might disappear. Whatever happens tomorrow, he whispered against her hair, know that you changed me. Before you, I was becoming my father, cold, calculating, seeing people as either assets or liabilities. You reminded me there's more to life than power. Olivia pressed closer, memorizing the feel of him, the sound of his heartbeat under her ear. We're going to win tomorrow, she said with more confidence than she felt. And then we'll build something new. Together. Together, he echoed, but something in his voice suggested he wasn't as certain. Morning brought a flurry of activity. Security teams checking and rechecking protocols. Antonio on the phone constantly, speaking in rapid Italian that Olivia couldn't follow. A tailor arrived with clothes for her. A simple but elegant black dress that fit perfectly, though she'd never been measured for it. You need to look the part, Antonio explained. In that room, appearance matters almost as much as substance. By evening, the tension was palpable. Antonio dressed with careful precision. A charcoal suit that emphasized his shoulders, cufflinks bearing the Valenti family crest, a blood-red tie that seemed ominously appropriate. As they prepared to leave, he handed Olivia a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a single pendant, a key. It's beautiful, she said as he fastened it around her neck. But what does it mean? Antonio's fingers lingered at her nape. It's the key to a safe deposit box. Inside are documents, deeds, account numbers, identities. Everything you would need if... He couldn't finish the sentence. Olivia turned to face him. Nothing is going to happen to you. Promise me you'll use it if necessary. His eyes were intense, almost desperate. Promise me you'll save yourself if things go wrong. She wanted to argue, to insist they would both walk out of that meeting alive. Instead she nodded. I promise. The restaurant where the council was meeting looked unassuming from the outside. A small Italian place in Little Italy that had been in the same family for generations. But Olivia knew appearances were deceiving. This was Valenti territory, had been for decades. Antonio helped her from the car, his hand at the small of her back, both protective and possessive. "Remember," he murmured as they approached the entrance, "no matter what is said in there, show no reaction. These people smell fear like sharks smell blood." Olivia straightened her spine, lifting her chin. "I grew up in Queens, Antonio. I know how to handle sharks." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Yes, you do." The restaurant's main dining room was empty of regular customers. Instead, 14 people sat around a long table, 12 men and 2 women, all watching with calculating eyes as Antonio and Olivia entered. At the far end sat Antonio's uncle, his expression a mixture of surprise and contempt as he registered Olivia's presence. "Nephew," he said, voice deceptively pleasant. "I wasn't aware we were bringing guests to family business." Antonio guided Olivia to the empty chair at the head of the table, then remained standing beside her. "Miss Reynolds isn't a guest, Uncle. She's here because her safety has been threatened by a member of this family. That makes it council business." Murmurs rippled around the table. Olivia kept her expression neutral, though her heart hammered against her ribs. These people could order her death with a nod. Yet here she sat, challenging them with her very presence. "We have more pressing matters than your personal entanglements," the uncle said dismissively. "The attack on our warehouse was orchestrated by you," Antonio interrupted, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. "Just like the threats against Miss Reynolds. Just like the financial discrepancies in our legitimate businesses. Just like the unauthorized deals with the Moretti family." Silence fell heavy and dangerous. The uncle's face hardened. "Careful, boy. Those are serious accusations. With serious evidence to back them." Antonio removed a flash drive from his pocket, sliding it toward the center of the table. "Financial records. Surveillance footage. Witness statements. Everything the council needs to render judgment." One of the older men, white-haired with a face like weathered leather, picked up the drive. "These are grave claims, Antonio. If you're wrong, I'm not." Antonio's certainty was absolute. "My uncle has been undermining this family for years. He doesn't oppose my legitimate business strategy because he thinks it's weak. He opposes it because it would expose his own operations, the ones he runs without council approval, skimming profits that should go to all of us." All eyes turned to the uncle, whose face had gone dangerously still. "You bring an outsider to our meeting, make accusations without allowing me to prepare a defense. This is how you show respect for our traditions? I bring someone who has been threatened by you. I make accusations with evidence to support them." Antonio's voice remained steady. "And as for traditions, wasn't it you who taught me that the family comes before all else? That threats to the family must be eliminated." The implication hung in the air, electric with menace. The white-haired man inserted the drive into a laptop, and for several tense minutes, the only sound was the occasional murmur as council members leaned in to view the evidence. Olivia kept her eyes on Antonio's uncle, watching as his expression shifted from confidence to calculation to something approaching fear. Finally, the white-haired man closed the laptop. "The evidence appears substantial. Salvatore, what do you say in your defense?" The uncle's eyes never left Antonio. "I say my nephew has fabricated this so-called evidence to consolidate his power. To push through his agenda of dismantling everything his father, my brother, built." "I'm not dismantling it," Antonio countered. "I'm evolving it. The world is changing. We must change with it or be left behind." Pretty words from a weak man. The uncle's gaze shifted to Olivia. A man so easily distracted by a pretty face that he would risk everything his family has built. Antonio's hand came to rest on Olivia's shoulder, a silent show of support. "Miss Reynolds isn't a distraction. She's a reminder of what we're fighting for, a future where our family thrives without constant bloodshed, without looking over our shoulders for federal agents or rival families. A fantasy," the uncle spat. "A possibility," Antonio corrected. "One you're too blinded by greed and old grudges to see." The white-haired man raised a hand, silencing them both. "The council will deliberate on the evidence presented. Until then, He never finished the sentence. The restaurant's front windows exploded inward in a shower of glass and gunfire. Chaos erupted. Men overturned the heavy oak table for cover, weapons appearing in hands that had been empty seconds before. Antonio threw himself over Olivia, shielding her with his body as bullets tore through the restaurant. "Stay down," he shouted over the deafening gunfire, pulling her behind an overturned section of table. Through the haze of plaster dust and gun smoke, Olivia saw Antonio's uncle slip toward the kitchen, a phone pressed to his ear. Their eyes met for a split second, long enough for her to see the triumph in his expression. This wasn't an enemy attack. This was his plan all along. "Antonio," she screamed, pointing toward the retreating figure. "Your uncle." Antonio's head snapped up, tracking his uncle's movement. His expression hardened into something she'd never seen before, cold, lethal focus that reminded her who he truly was beneath the man she'd come to love. "Marco," he called to his security chief who was returning fire from behind a pillar. "Get Olivia out. Back exit. Car waiting." "No." Olivia clutched his arm. "I'm not leaving you. This isn't a debate." Antonio pressed a gun into her hand, small, lightweight but deadly. "Go with Marco. If anyone tries to stop you who isn't my man, use this." Before she could protest further, Marco was at her side, pulling her toward the kitchen. The last glimpse she had of Antonio was him moving through the chaos with deadly precision, heading in the direction his uncle had fled. Marco led her through the kitchen, past terrified staff huddled behind counters, and out a service door into an alley. A black SUV idled at the end, engine running. "Move," Marco urged, scanning the alley with his weapon raised. They were halfway to the vehicle when the kitchen door burst open behind them. Olivia turned to see two men emerge, guns already raised. "Down," Marco shouted, shoving her behind a dumpster as he fired. The exchange was brief and brutal. Marco took a bullet to the shoulder but managed to hit one attacker in the chest. The second man kept advancing, firing methodically. Olivia's hands shook as she raised the gun Antonio had given her. She'd never fired a weapon before, had never imagined she would need to. But Marco was bleeding, outgunned, and this man was coming to kill them both. She squeezed the trigger. The recoil surprised her, the sound deafening in the narrow alley. Her shot went wide, but it distracted the gunman long enough for Marco to fire again, dropping him to the pavement. "Come on," Marco gasped, blood soaking his suit jacket. "More will come." They reached the SUV, Marco practically falling into the passenger seat while Olivia slid behind the wheel. "Where?" she demanded, peeling away from the curb. "Safe house," Marco directed, pressing a handkerchief to his wound. "Upstate. Antonio will find us there." "We can't just leave him," Olivia protested, even as she navigated through back streets, away from the gunfire still echoing behind them. "He ordered me to protect you." Marco's voice was strained but firm. "That's what I'm doing." "And who's protecting him?" "Antonio Valenti has survived worse than this." But the worry in Marco's eyes belied his confident words. Olivia drove through the night, following Marco's increasingly weak directions. They switched vehicles at a garage in the Bronx, abandoning the bullet-riddled SUV for an inconspicuous sedan. By the time they reached the safe house, a modernist structure nestled in the Catskills, dawn was breaking over the mountains. Marco needed medical attention. Olivia helped him inside, her hands steady now as she cleaned and bandaged his wound. The bullet had gone through cleanly, missing anything vital, but he'd lost blood and needed antibiotics. "There's a medical kit in the master bathroom," Marco told her. "Prescription strength everything. Antonio makes sure all safe houses are stocked." Of course he did. Antonio Valenti, always prepared for violence to follow him. After tending to Marco, Olivia explored the house. A sleek, minimalist space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a pristine lake. It was beautiful, peaceful, and felt a million miles from the bloodshed they'd escaped. In the master bedroom, she found a closet with women's clothes in her size. The realization that Antonio had prepared this place for her, for them, sent a wave of emotion through her so powerful she had to sit on the edge of the bed. Hours passed with no word. Olivia tried the burner phone Marco had given her, but Antonio didn't answer. News reports mentioned a gang-related shooting at an Italian restaurant in Little Italy. 3 confirmed dead, multiple injured. No names released. By nightfall, Olivia was frantic. Marco, pale but alert on the living room couch, watched her pace. "He'll come," he assured her. "Or he'll send word." "Unless he can't," Olivia whispered, voicing the fear that had been growing since they fled the restaurant. Marco had no answer for that. It was just past midnight when they heard the sound of tires on gravel. Marco immediately reached for his gun, gesturing for Olivia to move away from the windows. "Stay back," he ordered, positioning himself by the door despite his injury. Footsteps approached. A key turned in the lock. The door swung open to reveal Antonio, alive but barely standing, blood soaking one side of his suit jacket, his face a mask of exhaustion and pain. "Antonio!" Olivia rushed forward as he stumbled into the house. He caught her with his good arm, holding her so tightly it hurt. "You're safe," he breathed against her hair. "Thank God." "You're hurt," she countered, already helping him to the couch. "Marco, the medical kit." "I've got it," Marco said, already moving despite his own injury. Olivia helped Antonio remove his jacket and shirt, revealing a deep gash along his ribs. Not a bullet wound, she realized with relief, but a knife cut, serious but not immediately life-threatening. "What happened?" she asked, cleaning the wound with hands that refused to tremble. She'd moved beyond fear into a strange, focused calm. Antonio winced as the antiseptic stung. "My uncle was ready for us. The attack was coordinated, hired guns, not family. He meant to eliminate the entire council and blame it on the Moretti family. Did he succeed?" "Partially. 3 council members dead, 2 injured." Antonio's expression darkened. "He escaped in the chaos, but not before I heard him on the phone. He's gathering his loyalists at the estate upstate." "For what?" "War." The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. "He'll claim I've betrayed the family by exposing our business to outsiders. That I'm weak, compromised. He'll try to take control by force. And the remaining council members? Divided. Some support me, some him. Others are waiting to see who comes out on top." Antonio caught her hand, stilling her ministrations. "Olivia, you need to leave. Get as far from New York as possible. I've arranged papers, money." "Stop." She pulled her hand free, continuing to dress his wound. "I'm not going anywhere. This isn't your fight. It became my fight when your uncle threatened my mother." She secured the bandage, then met his eyes. "When I fell in love with you. When I killed a man tonight to protect myself and Marco." Antonio's eyes widened at this last revelation. "Olivia. I made my choice, Antonio. Just like you made yours when you came back for me at that coffee shop." She cupped his face. "We finished this together." For a moment he looked like he might argue. Then something shifted in his expression. Respect, acceptance, and beneath it all, love so fierce it took her breath away. "Together," he agreed, pulling her close with his good arm. "But we do it my way. Smart. Calculated. No unnecessary risks." Over the next 2 days, the safe house became a command center. Antonio's loyal soldiers arrived in small groups, hard-eyed men and women who looked at Olivia with curiosity but addressed her with respect. They brought news, weapons, and tactical gear. Antonio's uncle had indeed declared him a traitor to the family. Half the organization had sided with the uncle, including most of the old guard who preferred traditional operations. But Antonio's push for legitimacy had won him allies too, younger members who saw the future in legal enterprises, who were tired of violence and prison sentences. "The estate is fortified," reported a lieutenant named Russo, pointing to satellite images spread across the dining table. "At least 30 men, heavy weapons. Your uncle is calling for a formal challenge, old school." "Meaning?" Olivia asked. "Meaning he wants me to face him personally," Antonio explained. "One-on-one. Winner takes all." "It's a trap," Marco said flatly. "He'll never fight fair." "Of course it's a trap." Antonio studied the images. "But it's also an opportunity. If I refuse, I look weak to those still on the fence. If I accept, I can dictate certain terms." "Like what?" Olivia asked, trying to keep the fear from her voice. Antonio's smile was grim. "Like bringing our own security. Like having the remaining council members present as witnesses. Like ensuring certain evidence reaches federal authorities if anything happens to me." The planning continued through the night. Olivia listened, occasionally offering insights that made Antonio look at her with surprised appreciation. Her perspective as an outsider sometimes revealed angles the others missed. "You'd have made a formidable consigliere in another life," Antonio commented as they finally retired to the bedroom. "In this life I'll settle for being the woman who keeps you alive," she replied, helping him change his bandage. The wound was healing well, but he was still in pain. Not that he would admit it to his men. Only with Olivia did he allow himself to show vulnerability. "Tomorrow," he said as they lay in bed, her head on his chest, careful of his injury. "We end this tomorrow. One way or another," she agreed, tightening her arm around his waist. "If something happens to me, don't. Olivia, please." His voice was gentle but insistent. "If something happens, the necklace I gave you, use it. The safe deposit box has everything you need to disappear. My men have instructions to get you out of the country." She propped herself up to look at him. "And if I don't want to disappear? If I want justice instead?" Antonio studied her face in the moonlight filtering through the windows. "You've changed," he said softly. "Since that morning in the hotel. We both have." She traced the line of his jaw. "You're not the man who threw me out like garbage. And I'm not the woman who let men like you define her worth." He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "No, you're the woman who reminded me what I'm fighting for. A future worth having." They made love slowly, mindful of his injury, each touch a promise neither was certain they could keep. Afterward, as Antonio slept, Olivia slipped from the bed and padded to the living room. Marco sat by the window, keeping watch despite his own wound. He glanced up as she approached. "You should rest," he said. "Tomorrow will be difficult. I need to ask you something." Olivia sat across from him. "And I need the truth." Marco studied her, then nodded once. "If things go wrong tomorrow," she said carefully, "what are Antonio's real orders regarding me?" A flicker of surprise crossed Marco's face, quickly masked. "To get you to safety. At any cost?" He hesitated, which was answer enough. "Even if it means leaving him behind," Olivia pressed. "Even if it means sacrificing himself." Marco sighed. "He loves you, Miss Reynolds. More than I've seen him care for anyone. He would burn down his entire empire to keep you safe. That's what I'm afraid of." She leaned forward. "I need your help, Marco. Not to escape, but to make sure we both survive tomorrow." "What are you suggesting?" "Insurance." Olivia's expression hardened. "The kind Antonio's uncle won't see coming." Marco listened as she outlined her plan. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. "Antonio won't like this," he finally said. "Antonio doesn't need to know." She held Marco's gaze. "Can you make the arrangements?" Another long pause. Then, "Yes." "Thank you." Olivia stood to return to bed. "Miss Reynolds," Marco called softly. When she turned, he added, "You would have made an excellent Valenti." She smiled faintly. "I'm not interested in the name, Marco. Just the man." Morning brought final preparations. Antonio moved with the focused intensity of a predator, checking weapons, reviewing plans, speaking privately with each of his lieutenants. He donned a perfectly tailored suit, armor of a different kind. When Olivia emerged from the bedroom in the bulletproof vest he'd insisted she wear beneath her clothes, he crossed to her immediately. "Last chance to walk away," he said quietly, "for her ears alone. No one would blame you." "I would." He straightened his tie. "Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't do anything stupidly heroic." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I love you, Olivia Reynolds." "I love you too." She kissed him, brief but fierce. "Now let's go end this." The Valenti estate sprawled across 50 acres of manicured grounds north of the city. As their convoy of black SUVs approached the wrought iron gates, Olivia felt a chill despite the warm September day. This was where Antonio had grown up, where he'd been molded into the man he was, for better and worse. Security waved them through after a tense radio exchange. Armed men lined the driveway, watching their approach with undisguised hostility. "Remember the plan," Antonio murmured as their vehicle stopped before the main house. "Stay with Marco at all times. If anything happens—" "Nothing will happen," Olivia interrupted, squeezing his hand. "Not to either of us." They exited the vehicle into bright sunshine that felt obscenely cheerful for what might become a bloodbath. Antonio's men formed a protective perimeter, facing off against his uncle's security in a silent show of force. The front doors opened and Salvatore Valenti Jr. emerged, flanked by his own lieutenants. He looked remarkably composed for a man who had orchestrated a massacre 2 days earlier. "Nephew," he called, arms spread in mock welcome. "You've accepted my invitation. And brought your friend." His gaze slid dismissively over Olivia. "How touching." "Uncle." Antonio's voice betrayed nothing of the rage Olivia knew he felt. "I see you've prepared quite the reception. Family business requires proper ceremony." The uncle gestured toward the house. "The remaining council members await us inside. Shall we?" As they followed him into the mansion, Olivia felt Marco close behind her, a reassuring presence. The grand foyer opened into a formal living room where 5 people sat in tense silence. The surviving council members, including the white-haired man who had examined Antonio's evidence at the restaurant. "Salvatore," the old man acknowledged Antonio with a nod. "Antonio, we are here to witness and judge." "There's nothing to judge, Don Ricci," the uncle said smoothly. "My nephew has brought outsiders into family business, has exposed our operations to unnecessary scrutiny, has weakened us with his distractions." Again that dismissive glance toward Olivia. "I've brought evidence of your betrayal," Antonio countered. "Of your deals with our enemies. Of your theft from family coffers. Of your orchestration of the attack that killed 3 council members." Murmurs rippled through the room. The uncle's expression hardened. Baseless accusations from a desperate man. He turned to the council members. "My brother built this family into what it is today. His son would dismantle it piece by piece for what? Legitimacy?" He spat the word like a curse. "There is no legitimacy for men like us. There is only power and those too weak to seize it." "There's a difference between weakness and evolution," Antonio replied. "The world is changing. We must change with it or be destroyed." Pretty words. The uncle's smile was cold. "But this isn't a debate, nephew. This is a challenge. You me. The old way." Antonio nodded once. "I accept. With conditions." "You're not in a position to make conditions." "On the contrary." Antonio's voice remained steady. "I have evidence of your crimes ready to be delivered to federal authorities if anything happens to me or Miss Reynolds. I have accounts of your betrayal prepared for every family ally from here to Sicily. I have men loyal to me embedded in your security detail." This last revelation caused a stir among the uncle's men, several shifting nervously. "So yes, uncle," Antonio continued, "I will face you, but it will be witnessed by the council. It will be fair. And when it's done, the family moves forward united, no reprisals against the losing side." The uncle's face flushed with anger, but he controlled it quickly. Always the diplomat. "Very well. The council will witness. But we do this now." Don Ricci, the white-haired elder, stood. "The garden. Neutral ground. 10 minutes. As the room emptied, Antonio turned to Olivia. "Stay with Marco," he murmured, pressing a quick kiss to her forehead. "Whatever happens." "I know," she interrupted. "I love you." Something flickered in his eyes. Regret, determination, love. "I love you too." Then he was following the others toward the garden, shoulders straight, head high. Every inch the Valenti air. Marco touched Olivia's elbow. "This way, Miss Reynolds." Instead of following the main group, he led her through a side door and down a hallway lined with family portraits. Generations of Valenti men stared down at them with the same dark eyes Antonio had inherited. "Where are we going?" Olivia whispered. "Insurance," Marco replied, using her own word from the night before. They emerged onto a terrace overlooking the garden. Below, a circle had formed, council members and lieutenants creating a human arena. In the center stood Antonio and his uncle, both now in shirt sleeves, circling each other like wolves. "Perfect," Marco murmured, positioning Olivia behind a stone balustrade that provided both view and cover. He handed her a small device. "When I give the signal, press this." "Not before." Olivia clutched the device, heart hammering as she watched the scene below. This wasn't the modern world of business deals and corporate takeovers. This was something primal, ancient. A contest of strength and will that would determine the future of an empire. The uncle moved first, a feint followed by a quick jab that Antonio easily avoided. They were testing each other, looking for weaknesses. Antonio was younger, faster, but his uncle had experience and cunning. And Olivia suspected a willingness to cheat. The fight escalated quickly. Antonio took a hard hit to his injured side, pain flashing across his face. But he recovered, landing 2 sharp blows that sent his uncle staggering back. Blood appeared on both men's faces, their breathing growing labored as the brutal dance continued. "Come on," Olivia whispered, knuckles white around the device Marco had given her. Below, the uncle stumbled, seemingly dazed by a particularly vicious strike. Antonio hesitated, just for a second but long enough. The older man's hand emerged from his pocket with a flash of metal. A knife. "Antonio!" Olivia's scream was lost in the sudden uproar as the uncle lunged, blade slicing toward Antonio's throat. Antonio twisted, the knife catching his shoulder instead of his neck. Blood bloomed across his white shirt. The council members shouted protests. This was meant to be unarmed combat, but no one intervened. "Now," Marco said sharply. "Press it now." Olivia jabbed the button. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then every phone in the garden, including those of the security personnel surrounding the fight, began to ring simultaneously. Confusion rippled through the crowd. The uncle faltered, glancing toward his men. In that moment of distraction, Antonio struck. A devastating combination that sent the older man crashing to the ground, the knife skittering across stone. Antonio stood over him, chest heaving, blood streaming from his shoulder. "Yield," he demanded. The uncle spat blood. "Never." "Then you leave me no choice." Antonio looked up, scanning the faces surrounding them until he found Olivia on the terrace. Their eyes met across the distance, and he gave an almost imperceptible nod. She pressed the device again. Every screen on every phone lit up with the same image. Security footage from the restaurant massacre, clearly showing the uncle on the phone directing the gunman. The timestamp matched exactly when the attack began. Gasps and curses filled the garden. The uncle struggled to his feet, wild-eyed as he realized what was happening. "Lies," he shouted. "Fabrications." "The truth," Antonio countered, his voice carrying across the sudden silence. "Sent just now to every member of this family. Every ally. Every business partner." He turned to the council members. "My uncle betrayed not just me but all of you. He ordered the deaths of council members to seize power. He would have killed everyone in that restaurant if it served his purpose." Don Ricci stepped forward, his ancient face a mask of cold fury as he studied his phone. "Is this authentic?" "Verified by 3 independent sources," Antonio confirmed. "Along with financial records showing he's been skimming from family businesses for years. Making deals with the Moretti family behind our backs. Undermining everything we've built." The uncle's gaze darted around the circle, finding no allies among the shocked faces. His hand moved toward his waistband, reaching for a hidden weapon. "Don't," Antonio warned. The uncle ignored him, desperation overriding caution. His hand emerged with a pistol. 3 shots rang out simultaneously. The uncle jerked, red blooming across his chest from multiple angles. He looked almost surprised as he crumpled to the ground. Olivia's hands flew to her mouth, stifling a cry. Below, Antonio hadn't moved, hadn't needed to. 3 of his loyal men had fired the moment the weapon appeared. Silence fell over the garden, broken only by the uncle's labored breathing as life drained from him. Antonio knelt beside him, leaning close to hear his final words. Whatever was said, it made Antonio's expression harden before he stood facing the council. "It's done," he said simply. Don Ricci approached, studying Antonio with calculating eyes. "The evidence is compelling. But this creates a vacuum. The family requires leadership." "I'm aware." Antonio's voice was steady despite his bleeding shoulder. "I'm prepared to step into that role with the council's blessing. But on my terms. Which are? We accelerate our move into legitimate businesses. We maintain our protection operations for those who need it. But we end the trafficking, the violence for its own sake." Antonio's gaze swept the circle. "We evolve. We survive. We thrive." Murmurs rippled through the gathering, some approving, others uncertain. Don Ricci considered for a long moment, then nodded slowly. The council will deliberate. But I believe we have seen enough today to know which path offers the family the best future. He gestured to Antonio's wound. Get that tended to. We will reconvene this evening for a formal decision. As the crowd dispersed, Marco guided Olivia down to the garden. Antonio was already moving toward them, ignoring his men's attempts to examine his injury. You're hurt, Olivia said as they reached each other. I'll live. His eyes searched her face. You and Marco. The phones. That was your doing. It wasn't a question. Olivia nodded. Insurance. A complex mix of emotions crossed Antonio's face. Admiration, exasperation, and something like awe. You could have been killed if you'd been discovered. So could you. She touched his face gently. I wasn't going to stand by and watch it happen. Antonio looked at Marco, who shrugged unapologetically. She's persuasive, boss. A laugh escaped Antonio. Short, surprised, and genuine. That she is. He pulled Olivia close with his good arm, heedless of the blood staining her clothes. That she is. The next hours passed in a blur. Antonio's wound required stitches, administered by a doctor who asked no questions. Security teams swept the estate, identifying and removing the uncle's most loyal men. The remaining council members sequestered themselves to deliberate, though the outcome seemed increasingly certain. Olivia found herself in what had been Antonio's childhood bedroom, a space that felt more like a hotel suite than a place where a boy had grown up. No posters, no mementos. Just expensive furniture and tasteful art. My father believed sentimentality was weakness, Antonio explained, finding her examining a formal family portrait, the only personal touch in the room. Attachments could be exploited. Is that why you pushed me away that morning at the hotel? Olivia asked. Because caring was weakness? Antonio considered this, sitting on the edge of the bed as the doctor finished bandaging his shoulder. Partly, but mostly it was fear. Not of my uncle or the family, but of what I felt for you after just one night. It was overwhelming. And now I know that what my father called weakness is actually my greatest strength. He dismissed the doctor with a nod, then held out his hand to her. You make me better, Olivia. Stronger. More human. She took his hand, allowing him to pull her close. Human looks good on you, Antonio Valenti. His smile was tired but genuine. I'm glad you think so. Because I'm hoping you'll consider making it permanent. Olivia's breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying that life is unpredictable and often short in my world. I'm saying that I don't want to waste another day without you by my side. His dark eyes held hers. I'm saying that I love you, and if you'll have me, I want to build something real with you. Something that lasts. Before she could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. Marco entered, his expression carefully neutral. The council has reached a decision, he announced. They're waiting in the study. Antonio nodded, pressing a quick kiss to Olivia's forehead. We'll finish this conversation later. Promise? She asked. Promise. The study was a masculine space of leather and dark wood, dominated by a massive desk that had once belonged to Antonio's father. The 5 remaining council members stood as they entered, faces unreadable. Don Ricci stepped forward. Antonio Valenti. The council has deliberated on the events of today and the evidence presented. We have reached a unanimous decision. Antonio straightened, his hand finding Olivia's. The Valenti family requires strong leadership. Leadership that honors our traditions while securing our future. The old man's stern expression softened slightly. Your father would be proud of the man you've become, Antonio. The council recognizes you as the head of the Valenti family, effective immediately. Relief washed through Olivia, though she kept her expression neutral as Antonio had taught her. This was a victory, but also the beginning of a dangerous new chapter. I accept this responsibility, Antonio said formally. And I pledge to lead our family into a new era of prosperity and security. With certain conditions, Don Ricci added. Your strategy for legitimizing our businesses is approved. But the transition must be gradual, controlled, and certain traditional operations must continue in the interim. Antonio nodded, though Olivia felt the tension in his hand. Understood. There is one more matter. Don Ricci's gaze shifted to Olivia. The woman. Antonio's grip tightened. Miss Reynolds is under my protection. Non-negotiable. That is not the issue. The old man's expression remained impassive. The issue is her role. If she is to remain in your life, she must be formally recognized. Married. Brought into the family properly. Olivia blinked in surprise. This wasn't at all what she'd expected. That decision is between Miss Reynolds and myself, Antonio replied carefully. Perhaps. Don Ricci shrugged. But the family has traditions. Appearances matter. If she is important enough to risk everything for, she is important enough to make official. Antonio turned to Olivia, apology in his eyes. This isn't how I planned to have this conversation. He squeezed his hand. Life rarely goes according to plan. A smile touched his lips. No, it doesn't. He faced the council again. Miss Reynolds and I will discuss this privately. But I assure you, her position in my life is not temporary. Don Ricci nodded, apparently satisfied. Then we are concluded. There will be a formal ceremony tomorrow to recognize your position. Preparations are already underway. As the council members filed out, Antonio led Olivia to a private corner of the study. I'm sorry, he said quietly. The council is traditional. But I don't want you to feel pressured. Into marrying you? Olivia raised an eyebrow. Weren't you about to propose upstairs before Marco interrupted? Antonio laughed softly. I was working up to it. Though I imagine something more romantic than marry me because the Mafia council insists. I don't need romance. She touched his face gently. I just need you. The real you, not the Mafia boss or the businessman, but the man who washes dishes in my tiny kitchen and reads Jane Austen because I mentioned liking it. Is that a yes? It's an ask me properly and find out. Antonio's smile widened. Despite his injured shoulder, he lowered himself to one knee, taking her hand in his. Olivia Reynolds. You've seen me at my worst and somehow found something worth loving. You've faced danger and death without flinching. You've changed me in ways I'm still discovering. His dark eyes held hers. Will you marry me? Not because tradition demands it, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Tears pricked Olivia's eyes. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will. He rose, pulling her into a kiss that promised a future neither of them had dared imagine 3 months ago. 1 year later, the Valenti estate had transformed. Gone were the armed guards at every entrance, the atmosphere of tension and fear. In their place was a sense of openness, still secure but no longer a fortress. Olivia stood on the terrace where she had watched Antonio fight for his life, now decorated with fairy lights and flowers for their anniversary celebration. Below, the garden bloomed with late summer color, tables arranged for the intimate gathering of family and trusted friends. Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Valenti Reynolds, came Antonio's voice as he joined her, sliding an arm around her waist. She leaned into him, smiling at the hyphenated name he always used. His insistence that she keep her identity even as she joined his world. Just thinking about how much has changed in a year, she replied. For both of us. And it had. Antonio had moved aggressively to legitimize the family businesses, faster than the council had wanted but with undeniable success. The violence had decreased dramatically. The Valenti name now appeared in business journals rather than crime reports. Olivia had completed her nursing degree with Antonio's full support, now dividing her time between hospital shifts and overseeing the Valenti Foundation, their newest venture, providing healthcare and education to underserved communities. Her mother lived in a comfortable apartment near them, her health improved with proper treatment. She and Antonio had developed an unlikely bond, united in their love for Olivia. Do you ever regret it? Antonio asked, his voice low. Choosing this life? Choosing me? Olivia turned to face him. Never. Do you regret bringing a hotel maid into your world? Best decision I ever made. He kissed her softly. Though I'm still not convinced you didn't plan the whole thing. Seduce the Mafia boss, take over his empire. She laughed. Yes, that was exactly my plan when I was scrubbing toilets at the luxury grand. Their banter was interrupted by Marco, now Antonio's consigliere and their closest friend. Sorry to interrupt, he said, but your guests are arriving. Antonio nodded. We'll be right down. As Marco left, Antonio took Olivia's hands in his. Before we join everyone, I have something for you. He removed a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet with a single charm, a key that matched the necklace he'd given her the night of the council meeting. What's this one for? She asked as he fastened it around her wrist. The future. Antonio's eyes held hers. I've transferred ownership of the riverfront property to your name. The plans are approved. A community health center just like you wanted. Emotion welled in Olivia's throat. The project had been her dream. A place where people like her mother could receive care regardless of insurance or income. Antonio, that's a beginning, he finished for her. The first of many. We're building something that will outlast us, Olivia. Something good. She kissed him, pouring all her love and gratitude into the gesture. When they parted, both were smiling. Ready to face the wolves? He asked, offering his arm. Olivia laughed. After everything we've survived? A dinner party is nothing. They descended to the garden together where their guests awaited. A mix of Antonio's legitimate business associates, Olivia's colleagues from the hospital, and yes, a few council members who had come to respect the new direction of the Valenti family. As Antonio raised a glass to toast their first year together, Olivia looked around at the gathered faces. Some who had witnessed their beginning, others who had joined their journey along the way. All now part of this new life they'd built from the ashes of violence and betrayal. To new beginnings, Antonio said, his voice carrying across the garden. And to the woman who taught me that true strength isn't found in power or fear, but in the courage to change. Glasses clinked as the sun set over the estate, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Later, as music played and conversations flowed, Antonio pulled Olivia away from the crowd, leading her to a quiet corner of the garden. Happy? He asked, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. More than I ever thought possible, she admitted. Though sometimes I still wake up expecting to find myself back in that tiny apartment, rushing to make my shift at the hotel. And instead you find yourself married to a reformed criminal. His smile was self-deprecating. Not exactly the fairy tale ending. No, Olivia agreed, reaching up to trace the scar on his shoulder. A permanent reminder of that day in the garden. It's better. It's real. Antonio's expression softened. I have something to tell you. I was going to wait, but... What is it? The last of the traditional operations ended yesterday. It's done, Olivia. Everything, all of it, is legitimate now. She stared at him, processing the magnitude of this statement. The council agreed. They didn't have much choice. The evidence against my uncle revealed how vulnerable those operations had become. The risk outweighed the profit. His eyes held hers. We're free, Olivia. Truly free. The weight of his words settled around them like a blessing. No more looking over their shoulders. No more compromises with darkness. A clean slate, hard won but finally achieved. What happens now? She asked. Now. Antonio smiled, pulling her close. Now we live. We build. We remember where we came from, but we don't let it define where we're going. As they rejoined their guests, Olivia caught sight of her reflection in one of the garden's decorative mirrors. A woman she barely recognized. Not the invisible maid who had moved through hotel corridors like a ghost. Not the frightened girl who had been humiliated in front of powerful men. This woman stood tall, confident, her hand clasped with the man who had once been her greatest shame and was now her greatest joy. A woman who had faced darkness and emerged stronger. Who had transformed her life not by running from pain, but by walking through it with her head held high. From hotel maid to the heart of a new Valenti legacy. It wasn't a path she could have imagined that morning in Suite 1103, when Antonio's cold dismissal had seemed like the end of her world rather than the beginning of something extraordinary. Life, Olivia had learned, rarely followed a predictable path. Sometimes the deepest wounds led to the most profound healing. Sometimes the people who hurt you most became the ones who loved you best. And sometimes, a moment of humiliation could be the first step toward a life beyond your wildest dreams. As Antonio squeezed her hand, his eyes finding hers across the crowded garden, Olivia smiled. Their story wasn't perfect. It was messy, complicated, marked by pain and redemption in equal measure. But it was theirs. And that made it beautiful. If this story touched your heart, Please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear that even our darkest moments can lead to unexpected light. Subscribe to Serafina's stories for more tales of transformation, love against all odds, and the courage to rewrite your own ending. Remember, sometimes the most powerful person in the room isn't the one with wealth or status. It's the one with the strength to stand tall when the world tries to break them. Until next time, keep believing in second chances and the power of true connection.